Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome to our Through the Bible in a Year broadcast. Today we're finishing up, or at least yesterday, finishing up 2 Kings. The story of Israel being conquered by Babylon. This is just a devastating moment in Israelite history, and I don't think we adequately appreciate what would have happened in the mind of a person in Judah as they are being led off to captivity. I don't see how I can adequately appreciate not the being led off part, but the idea that their faith would stay intact, the idea that they would still believe in God while they are being led away captive. The idea in Israel, the idea in Judah, common at the time, was that God was going to protect the city of Jerusalem. God had a house there, had a place, a physical place that could not be destroyed, and that was the temple. The idea was common that the king was in power because of divine appointment. And so for the kingdom to fall, the king to die, and the people to be taken away, had to feel like not just that God abandoned the people, but that God really wasn't there. There had to have been moments for people where they looked around and looked around and went, "What am I doing?" And yet their faith didn't waver, or didn't seem to. It doesn't seem to be a wavering in their faith. It seems like they just a second. It seems like even though sometimes I forget to plug that camera in. It seems like there's no wavering in their faith, even though from my perspective there should be. There should be a wavering. There should be something that happens to the people because of the trauma that they're experiencing. I know in my own life, as I experience traumas, or as I deal with people who experience trauma, there's a difficulty. There is a level at which it becomes hard to actually deal with life within the context of faith. In other words, not because our faith is untrue, but because when the rubber meets the road, you sometimes find out where you have not truly experienced or lived out the faith correctly. Sometimes you experience things that make you rework how your faith impacts you. Just like everything else, there are times where we have events that cause us to reshape our political ideology, that cause us to reshape what we think about family members. There are things in this world, there are events that happen, traumas that happen, that cause us to rethink our lives all the time. But it's pronounced when it happens to people of faith. And all too often, we in the West, because we live in such isolation from other people, we lose our faith. And I think one of the realities that this story from Judah teaches us is that the people did not lose their faith because it was in this collective trauma that they came together as a people, as a distinct family unit, and reevaluated and understood what their faith really meant and what God was really trying to say to them. Because it's in Babylon that most of the Bible as we know it was actually put down on paper for the first time. Many of these books that we read and we reflect on, they are produced because it's in this trauma of Babylon that the people of Judah start really taking seriously and reflecting seriously on the stories that they knew. And they started to appreciate God in a different way. That needs to be something we recognize, is that there are times and places where trauma is great. And there are times where we need to reflect on what we believe about God. A friend of mine this past week was told by somebody close to this friend, Christians can't go through depression. Obviously, this individual has not really experienced the depth of pain that is possible in the human experience, and never experienced it as a Christian. I can mention this because this is a very common occurrence. There are a lot of people who believe something similar. The trauma of life teaches us something different, and we learn and grow out of that. This is part of John of the Cross's famous book, The Dark Night of the Soul. The absence, the seeming absence of God, which leads us deeper into the presence of God. Christians can absolutely go through traumas, can absolutely go through depression, not because God necessarily wants us to, and not because it necessarily makes us stronger, but as we go through it, we can learn about who we are and who God is, and we can certainly come out, if we choose to, and if we work with others and with God, we can certainly come out in a position where we understand God better and we have a deeper relationship with God. So that's my reflection on the closing chapters of 2 Kings. Just to let people know, the pattern that I am following for reading the Bible through in a year does not go straight to the books that the follow typically. I'm not going to go from 2 Kings into Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, 1st, 2nd Chronicles, and all of those. The pattern that I'm following this year skips ahead to Isaiah. So next week, don't be surprised when I talk about the book of Isaiah. Don't think that you've missed a bunch, because you haven't. That's just the way that this schedule works. So until we meet again, God bless.